Hi, Jessica. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ellen.
So we're both meeting one another for one another's audiences to like introduce ourselves, what we do, what we're about, and to really talk today about a topic that's close to both of our hearts, which is does personality impact your business operations, decisions, so on and so forth. So yeah, be great for you to just share who you are, what you're about before we kick off, and I'll do the same.
Yeah, my name is Jessica Lackey, located in Charlotte, North Carolina. I call myself a business and operations strategist. I work with expertise-based business owners to help them implement the sustainable business foundations for growth and scale. And I've met Ellen through the power of other people's networks, so I'm excited to have a joint conversation. Ellen, can you share with the audience who you are and what you do?
Hi, I'm Ellen Donnelly. I run a coaching company called The Ask. And at The Ask, it's all about asking the big questions about life, about career, about business. But I call myself an entrepreneur coach because I'm so passionate about, yeah, entrepreneurs helping you figure out what you're about, what your uniqueness is, and then building a business that's really aligned to you. So I work with a lot of founder-led brands, people who have a lot of say over what they build. So we have a lot of alignment in terms of like those systems, those processes. I think my big thing is like pivoting into a bold new move, making a big change and a big impact in the world, and really trusting yourself and what I call kind of playing big. So yeah, I'll share a little bit about my own journey there, and maybe some clients today. So should we kick off with the $1 million question, I guess, for this session anyway, which is should we really take our personality into account when it comes to how we build our businesses? Discuss.
I'm going to discuss. I'm going to say 100%. I really think that, and again, I'm sure we'll go on this, but I think there's like the business that you build requires thinking about how you deliver the business and how you market and sell the business. Um, Delivering the business, some models require like longevity over time and deep work and an intimate knowledge of people's relationships. Those models tend to require a little less public marketing. There are other models that I have some former clients who are like, they don't want to get in deep with clients. They want to get in, they want to get out. They're always like looking for something new. And there are business models that are not suited for them, but that requires a different spin on the marketing, different requirements. What about you? How do you think that personality impacts how you show up in business?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% to this question. I think it impacts the business you choose to run in the first place, the likelihood of success for you and that business. Like we here in tech, product market fit, and I like to call it founder market fit. I'm not the first person to refer to that concept, but often we hear about it from the perspective of, oh, as a founder, I saw this problem in my previous work experience. I'm going to go solve it. That's why I'm the founder for this problem, which is 100% legit to do that. Then I think there's another layer like you're talking about, which is your personality going to suit you to the actual day-to-day experience of running that business? Like the success metrics of that business, are they going to be a fit for how you're wired, what you enjoy, what gives you energy? So many ways we could talk about this question, but maybe like, yeah, that delivery model you're talking about. I'd love to hear a bit more what your version of that is and how maybe because you were telling me how it shows up even in your own choice of business right now.
Yeah, in my business right now, so for those of you who don't know me, I have like five business models. 10 out of 10 do not recommend this. So I work as a fractional COO for one or two companies at a time. Currently, that's something I'm transitioning away from. I work one-on-one advisory with 10 to 15 clients at a given time. I run a group program and then I have a membership. Again, do not recommend these things. Um, my whole business model is designed for longevity with clients. I love working with people through the ebbs and the flows of their relationships, but that limits the quote unquote number of people that I can work with at a given time. But it also requires me to really not get bored of similar questions, similar clients, similar concepts. My business is built on longevity, which means that I can talk about one thing, one general concept over and over and over and over and over and over again. My business is built on that, and that's not the right fit for everybody. So I'm a what I've heard called a grassland. I'm relentlessly consistent in how I show up and how I market and how I deliver, because that's in my personality type. I'm a Taurus rising. No, I'm a Taurus moon. That's what it is. I like to be grounded in the earth.
Yeah, and that like you do these monthly sessions, you're creating these, you put it really nicely before we hit record, which was like, let me be that forcing mechanism for my clients to be consistent by me using the fact that I am and then letting them kind of come into my world and be consistent with me. And that's a trait. Have you always had that trait like prior to being a business owner, would you say?
I don't know if I've always had that trait, but the jobs I worked in my prior life, I was a senior, I was a planning leader, and so I either by luck or by being molded into that, every month we were planning, we were doing demand management, supply management concepts. Every month we were reviewing our metrics because it was required. Every season there was a new season rolling in that we were planning for and a new season being sold. So because I was in planning for so long, I became really, really used to that like rhythm and metronome of like month in, month out, day in, day out type of work. And so that's how I've learned to run my business because that's what I did when my past corporate job. Um, Again, sales and marketing would have gone crazy doing planning. They would be like, oh my God, I'm so bored. And planners are like, give me routine and rhythm and structure and consistency and building over time. It's just a different personality type.
Mm. And like, I think what's jumping out for me as you're talking is that serves you really well in some respects. And then we have this whole, we have to wear all the hats as the business owner often. So, yes, you have this delivery that's really strong. And then how do you translate that to finding the new thing, finding the new angle for sales and marketing? Like, can you leverage that same strength in that way? Or do you need to like then call on another strength in order to grow your business, for example?
Well, again, my personality type for how I market is very similar to the personality type as how I deliver. I'm pitching for collaborations month in, month out. I'm using my strength and follow up. You put the email in my inbox and it took me like went on vacation and it took us a little bit of time to get this scheduled. But how I deliver and how I sell is how I show up. I want to like build long-term relationships. People come into my programs and they've been coming to my monthly classes for, 6 to 12 months by now. And again, like I made my marketing align with my personality type because I like routine and rhythm, but I recognize that I am a unique little snowflake who's like, ooh, let me send a newsletter every single week, every year. Like that's not how like most, I don't want to say most, it's not how many entrepreneurs like to work. I managed to make my marketing match my personality type, but I'd love to hear more about yours.
Mm,
Because I'm a relentless, consistent metronome for my clients, metronome for myself. I am that touch point like every Sunday at 10 o'clock in Eastern time. I'm going to show up in your inbox week in, week out. That works for me and my personality type, but many of my clients do not have that kind of desire to be like that rhythmic in their business.
yeah.
I think you're probably in that camp of wanting to be doing new things.
New things for sure. I think like if I look through areas in my life that I've been most engaged, most fulfilled, it's like this new project, this from scratch idea, worked in startup innovation, like building new things even as a kid was always an area of energy. And so I have to be very careful with that trait because it can often lead you to wanting to burn down what you have or like just start afresh and not leverage the assets that you have in your business. So I toggle that with some consistency. For example, I have a newsletter that I write every single week as well, which I'm so grateful I've been disciplined enough to do that because I would say that's probably the only area of my business that I am that sort of consistent with. And that's the ego of having an audience waiting for your newsletter, right? That outweighs the like desire to be like, oh, feeling a bit less consistent this week. So that gets that out for me out the door. But I have to then go fill my cup with like new experiences, travel, meeting new people, working with different client types. I changed my niche quite a lot. I mean, there's a lot of consistency in my niche throughout the 5 years I've been a coach, but the kind of external manifestation of the niche does move forward and change a lot. And I create new programs a lot. I've created 4 group programs this year. So I 100% have to scratch that itch. And I think there's like a blessing and a curse to that. Um, yeah. And I'm really interested in the topic of what personality type, like what marketing suits your personality type, because I think that's one that most people can kind of understand and see for themselves. So one of them, for example, would be like the extroversion can lend itself really well to networking, right? Like if you love meeting new people, you love heading out of the door at the start of the day and like going to coffees, going to lunches. I think that if that's you, then use that, like really leverage that, because so much of sales and marketing happens in person and we forget that in the online world. But I think there is something to be said for like the person that really drains and they're more introverted, let's say, they're really good at analysis or writing, and they could actually just build really strong marketing funnels and ad machines because they have that like attention to detail. They have that interest and openness to sitting in a room and working on that stuff. And I think it's about knowing, not that there's only two options, right? There's shades of gray in between, but knowing that your peer or your friend's tactics to grow their business is not always going to sit as well with you. So yeah, it sounds like your newsletter, that's the thing that you've been kind of the most consistent with marketing wise, or have there been other things, the networking as well for you, you've been able to lean on that quite heavily?
Yeah, my business model for the first 3 years was a completely relationship driven number of people I needed. So it was very much I could build a network slowly over time, guest on podcasts. I could play a lot of the long tail game where because my client base would grow linearly, that meant my marketing could grow a little linearly. And so I didn't need, a big launch campaign and things like that. Because my business model depended on, like I wasn't also bringing people in for a 6 week short period of time. I wasn't having to necessarily generate a ton of new leads all the time.
Yeah.
So I could rely on more long game, low and slow marketing methods that matched my business model. But the challenge is when I think we either don't have a low and slow temperament and we're like, we want to do new things all the time. But we have a business model or in an audience side that doesn't match.
Mm.
So if you're like, I want to launch a new course all the time and I don't, I want to work with people in a one-time purchase or a short-time purchase, the marketing either has to be one of two things that drive traffic. It has to be, I'm going to figure out how to make the ad funnel work, or I'm going to be the omnipresent on the discovery platforms. And I think that the challenge we get into is when there's a mismatch of like, um, I don't want to do either of those two things, but yet I want to have a business model that is consistently new, lots of traffic, short purchases. And that's where I think you said it before we started filming, like you got to choose your hard, like either, if you want the business model that's kind of that more passive income type of business model that impacts your marketing plan as well.
Yeah, get ready to show up all the time when you don't feel like it and be on camera, be, on the algorithm, so to speak. Yeah, I hear it a lot with clients that I really want a business that will just run without me, passive income, that doesn't rely on social media. And I'm like, let me know when you find that, And it's not to say it can't happen. I think with maybe enough ad spend, enough really strong partnerships like affiliates, leveraging other people's networks, creating really amazing IP and really into like next level stuff that almost sells itself, you could probably get there. But I think for the average person starting out, either hustle through one to one, like person by person, build that network as you go through word of mouth, through people that you know, or commit to like, yeah, the high touch, maybe lower ticket business model of social media, but know that those are two different things. And you have some amazing resources, which I'll link when I share this, because you talk a lot about like what business model are you running. That's the way I heard about you initially, because I was sort of giving these things terms in my head, but you really put language to everything. And I was like, yes, someone said it. But I thought it could be fun to go through the Myers-Briggs. So like we've started with the E and I. So the next one, for anyone that doesn't know the MBTI scale, I'm not suggesting it's the perfect personality scale, but I think it's one of the best known ones and it works quite well for our black and white thinking that we're going to go through here just to paint a picture. So the next one is N versus S, which is whether you're like big picture or sensing, kind of more detail orientated. What are you, Jessica? Do you know?
I'm an N. I'm the intuition. I think that's the big picture, wanting to see how my business operates and how I can be part of the ecosystem.
Mm.
Whereas Are you an E or are you an N or an S?
N as well.
A lot of my, I don't know if you see this, a lot of my clients who are detail oriented, um, kind of like getting the information from the data, have to do a lot of activity to figure out what's going to work and in
Mm.
their business versus necessarily being like, all right, I have this big vision. How am I going to get from A to B?
Yeah, that sense, I sense this might work is I think a really big skill in business. Not the only skill, but this ability to be like, I have a hunch and I can't quite pinpoint the data, but I'm going to go with it and see. That's a really amazing trait because you can kind of move fast. But then I get jealous of people with a strong S trait as well because I miss detail all the time. I skim read stuff all the time and it gets me into trouble. So yeah, it's a bit of both. But yeah, I think if we're kind of giving advice here, I would say if you are an N, you're intuitive, like trust your intuition. There's so much advice out there. There's so much you can learn, but you can also just come up with your own view. And then if you're an S, like, lean into an area of your business that really allows you to have that like level of intent, level of analysis, um, whatever that might be. That could be anything. It could be your blog, your resources. It could be your entire IP, right? So um, then the next one, thinking versus feeling. So how you communicate, how you make decisions, how you kind of do you say, I feel this way, I think this way, more logical versus more emotional. I'm pretty strong T. How about you?
I'm also a very strong T.
We didn't do the first one though. What were your I?
I am an I'm like very in the middle. I'm an I that plays like an E.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm an E that plays like an I,
There you go.
which is really interesting. Okay, so back to T or F. So you're a strong T, so you're quite logical. That really makes sense with the work that you do with your clients. You help them like, no, but look at the data, like look at the reality here versus how people feel about things. Or how would you say this has shown up in your business, the T trait?
Yeah, I mean, I say that it's both a logical thing, but it's that because I love my clients and I very much care for my clients, but I can't if I was a feeler, like I'm empathic, but trying to hold space. Like if you're thinking about a membership or a community or lots of clients, I'm trying to hold space. If you're an F, sometimes could be like you might love it. And sometimes you might say, like, I can't hold that many emotions because I am such
Mm,
a feeler. And so I think it gets back to again, like your personality and like what that means for you and your business. Some people can logically hold 200 people in a community and everyone feels seen and there's the structures and because it's not quite that. Some people might hold 200 in a community where it's like all emotion. And some people may say, I only have the capacity to hold 5 to 10 people at a given time. I don't have my nervous system gets a little wrecked when I do launches because it's
mm,
so visibility requiring and it's nervous system shaking. And so this is where it's like, how does the F and the T show up for you in the
mm.
type of marketing that you want to do and the structure that you need to hold in your business?
I think we need a whole another conversation about launches, by the way. It's like I have so many thoughts on that, like around the adrenaline spike and then the like dopamine dip that happens after the launch, but that's another conversation. I think everyone finds the launches hard, but yes, I'm sure Fs especially in a community. It's really interesting because I was just talking about this earlier today. Like I have about 10 to 12 one-to-one clients right now, plus I'm running two groups. So that's about 40 people also in my head. And I don't have that like high emotional type of business. So it's not like I'm dealing with loads of emotions in those conversations. There are obviously some, but yeah, I can super imagine how like draining or like energy taxing it could be if you're also really highly empathetic to every single person and you go home and thinking about every single conversation you had that day, which some people are like that. So yeah, that's probably a benefit. I think the F, the feeling trait can be really helpful for people when it comes to like selling, like leading with emotion. Um, Maybe getting into a customer's shoes, really sort of seeing things from other people's perspectives. Um, so yeah, all of these traits, I think there's pros and cons for each type. So I bet I can guess that you're a J, the final one.
Well, you'd never guess. Yes, totally a J. What about you?
So judging, perceiving. So I'm also a J, which is interesting because like I do like kind of going with the flow in some ways, but I am pretty structured in control, which I think is the strong J preference. I think I was thinking about this one earlier, like if you're a P, which stands for perceiving, I think you're less planned, and that can feel like a bad thing in business, but it could also leave you open to more serendipity. And
Yeah.
if you think about what happens to people when they like make it to the top, they go viral, they suddenly become an overnight success. I'm pretty sure it's because they weren't controlling absolutely every variable, that they were putting themselves in positions where that could happen. And I don't feel like I've had that much serendipity in my business. I feel like it's pretty consistent with what I put in, put in, get out. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that one.
I have so many things I want to do in my business right now, and I've like architect my business a little so that like those things have to wait, which is unfortunate. But I have other clients and other students who are like, I don't know what I'm going to launch next. I don't know what form it's going to take, and they're very much in like I can't speak for human design, but they're the projector receiver. They're the one that's like they respond.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if you are a P, I'm like the most important thing is to respond. Like if you're not responding with a new marketing strategy or a new offer or something to fill the space, like again, it becomes hard to get those repeat sales. But it's maybe like I'm like, I don't care. Like it's like I'm like, I want you to show up with something cool. Like every season you might decide to do something new, but there's like the bit of like the J of like, okay, I want you to make sure you're coming to your audience every season with something they can buy if that's your business model. You may not know what it is, and it might come when you're in the shower. I mean, it certainly will come, when you're not expecting it. But I think like leaving the space for serendipity is something I think we should do more of. But knowing that like if your business relies on serendipity, how do we make sure that the serendipity shows up on a regular basis enough? Because
Let's
otherwise,
engineer that serendipity. Yeah.
a little bit like how do we say, okay, I don't know what it's going to be, but there's going to be space for this. I think it's where we get stuck as if we sometimes it's one of my coaches, he says on Wednesdays it's like on Mean Girls, on Wednesdays we wear pink, right? That's a bit of the like on Fridays I ship on Sundays. I think having those beats in the business, like at least some anchor points to say, if I wait for perfection and serendipity, I'm never going to put it out. But the more I kind of am in motion, the more
Mm.
serendipity is going to show up on more of a schedule. Um, so how do we engineer the right amount of structure to keep our businesses afloat, with serendipity saying we don't know totally what this is going to be and we're going to wait for magic to happen, but we know that like we do something in the fall, so we should plan for that.
Yeah. And I think even our newsletters are a good example of this. Like you may know ahead of time what your newsletters are going to be for a long period of time versus I know a newsletter's coming out later, like what's it going to be? We'll find out what's inspiring me. And I guess a J probably has already that structure of their newsletter planned, at least knowing that's happening, versus a P might not be even having the deadline in place, let alone knowing the topic. So yeah, and I think there's what was the other thought there was oh yeah, when you were talking about if you have a new thing each season, coming up with that is fine as long as it does come out. And the other challenge with doing that is you need to kind of build demand and build awareness about what you want to sell prior to selling it. So just because you have a great idea in the shower that morning doesn't mean you can sell it like later that day, right? So there is, I think, I honestly feel like the best entrepreneur would be like a healthy balance of all of these traits, but yeah, no, we're not quite like that, are we? But
And
it's funny that we're the same personality type.
yeah, well, I do think I think that's why I think there's also personality types of like how you like to consume and how you like to perform. I love to write. Some people really love to speak. Some people get a high on being on stages. So even our marketing strategies can be very personality dependent. But I think this is where you also have like a team. Like the only reason, like I love to write. I don't love to do video as much. The only reason I do my YouTube videos on schedule is because I have to pay my editor. And if I don't do my YouTube video, she doesn't get paid
Yeah.
because I'm like, all right, so I have a deadline. So um, the coaches that help me be more like someone I have to dream on schedule. It sounds so terrible, but I've engineered my business to a point where like I have like a full client roster, which means that like I have to set aside time for thinking and dreaming and ideating. And I have coaches that help me do that and protect that time. And I think
Mhm.
it's I have coaches that help me be more extroverted, and I have an assistant team that helps me focus on more of the details. I think it's like, because if you got to be one or the other of all these dimensions. And I think we have to like find those allies and assets in our business that help balance us out, because we can't be both sensing and intuitive. We
Yeah.
can't be both thinking and feeling. And so how do we build a business that's not just us through assets and allies?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because we're so often drawn to people that are like us, like coaches like us or team members like us. But there does need to be a sense of like, what's the trait that you're bringing that I don't have today? And that together we make that power team. Because if you're with like another big picture thinker, for example, like as a team member, the two of you are just going to come up with big ideas all the time and not actually be like, okay, how is this happening? When is this happening? So yeah, we'd have to do everything ourselves. And then the other point around personality that I think is worth referencing, we've talked a lot today about how do we build it into our decisions and our operations, but there's also the idea of how do we sell it? How do we sell to our customers based on our personality? So like personality as positioning.
Yeah.
So if you are really courageous, you're really like you're an activist, you're really bold, you really see the future, something like this, that might be a trait that your clients really need to see in you in order to trust you to buy from you because that's what they're either lacking or they need in order to like do the thing that they're trying to do with you. Or for what you've been sharing with me today about being a metronome, like being consistent, like amp that up in your marketing, right? Because that's what people are like, oh, Jessica can do this with me. So I think it's both, and it's both sharing those traits, the relevant ones, and living them, like delivering
Yeah.
on them, delivering on the value that you said. And I think I have a unique one in the sense that like ChatGPT actually pulled this out for me. There's this question that's going viral. It's like, what based on all of our interactions do you know about me that I might not know about me? And it said, you are highly creative and structured. And I was like, oh, that actually does make sense, but it's a almost counterintuitive combination. It feels like, oh, you're either this or that. And so I need to do a better job of saying to people, like, I can do both with you. And that feels a bit egotistic, but it's true. Like, I am doing it in myself and with my clients. So, yeah, it's like finding the uniqueness in yourself and sharing that so that you call in the right people for that trait.
Well, this goes back to a question that I had from our, again, pre-roll chat. How does your personality type dictate or inform and shape not just like how you work, but who you work with? Because again, we were talking that we serve somewhat of a similar audience, but because of our personality types, we serve them at different, potentially different places on their journey. So I'm curious to hear how your personality type shapes who and when you work with individuals.
Hmm. I think that question comes a little bit down to experience as well. So like the early clients I had were more of a match to the experience I had at that time of my business building journey compared to the ones that I meet now. Like some of them have 10, 20 years experience, which is more than I do, but I'm energetically still a match for their needs, right? Or for example, one of my clients is also based in North Carolina, is going through a pivot after 20 years. And so I think she chooses me because I have the structure and the strategic action, but also that like big picture imagination. Okay, what could that next phase look like? So I do try and filter for clients who are going to be open to that structured way of working. I'm not a coach that just sits there in silence and kind of lets emotion come over me and intuit. I'm much more like, what's the kind of goal of the session? What's the outcomes? What's the next step? Like I've written that down. You are going to be held accountable to it between now and next session, right? So that is different than some coaches. And I think that is a bit of a marmite trait for some people who are expecting a bit more touchy feely coaches. Um, but if somebody wants to just, I don't know, like iterate on a business they've already got and they don't want to make big changes, I don't think that I'm going to get that excited by that client. And we're probably not going to end up working together for that reason, because I think you can sense that fit in the discovery session.
Yeah. And in my view, I love the long term. Like, I'm like, all right, let's start with some data. Let's start with a hypothesis and let's build sustainably towards that. And let's build those foundations. As much as I just don't have maybe I could, but like, I'm a dreamer, but I'm more pragmatic than I would like to admit. And um, I like my intuition is not necessarily about giant leaps of creativity and like dreaming about what's possible. It's like, all right, how do we in the we didn't talk about this, but in the personality type, there's this kind of three stages of creation cycle. There's the, the ideation, there's the implement, there's the distillation and the activation, and then there's the implementation, the grounding of it. And I don't work well in the first phase.
Mm.
When it comes to like big picture visioning and like deconstructing and reconstructing what could be, I don't like tend to work there because I'm like, okay, I work better. I'm not in the wonder stage. I'm in the, all right, activation, distillation, integration, let's go phase, turning that like big picture idea into an actionable plan. I'm also really bad at the details. I'm like, all right, well, this is why on our collective team, I want you to have like a virtual assistant because all right, when it comes to like dotting the I's, crossing the T's, keeping your CRM updated, those are things that I say you should do.
Mhm.
And you know, like my like ability to do them like is like I don't like or like as long as it's happening, I don't need to write it down. But for a lot of my clients, like we end up having the three people in the team. It's like the dreamers, the integrators, and the doers, even though it's in a one-person business. But I think that's really important to say where in the creation cycle do you like to play?
Mm.
And again, how are you serving your clients? Like I'm like, I like to be right in the middle. We've got a vision, we're headed towards it. Some people are great at the end, like, all right, you know the plan. I'm going to help you execute and get it done and push things across the finish line. And some
Mm.
people are like, never ever make me touch implementation with a 10-foot pole. And I think it's really important to say where in the customer, like in the creative life cycle, do you want to play?
Yeah. Well, this has been like a big question for me because I've been in for such a long time in that like blank slate, it could be anything. And that's because I've worked with a lot of brand new entrepreneurs. So they have a history professionally, but they haven't got a business. Like they think they have a business, but they don't really have a business yet. They've got an idea. And so because it's still an idea phase, there's so much scope for creation. And I'm very good at that and enjoy that. But I think now as I evolve as a business owner, as my coaching evolves, I find it more valuable to work with somebody who already has a business because there's already some experience, some data, some lived experiences, but then they're recreating it. Partly because there's just a bit more opportunity there because they already have an established business and brand than a cold start. And it always takes longer to achieve that goal than you think. So I think it's about personality type and interests as well. Like, what's the interest that you have around specific conversations? But yeah, I definitely favor the former phases of that journey. Um, and as you say, get a VA, get an operations assistant. Like when we think about careers and finding jobs that we think are a fit, we find those fits in roles. And so we have to do the same as business owners. And like you say, just hire and support ourselves with the people that we're not in the same way that in a job you have a team. So how do we create that team to be like, yeah, much stronger? So I think there's a conversation that should be had more. I've enjoyed having it with my community and my blogs and so on around like finding a business that fits you or building the business around you, a business as unique as you are. So I'm glad that you come at this same angle, but from a slightly like later stage of the journey, perhaps in that ideation phase.
Yeah. And I think this is where, from a systematic business building approach and ecosystem approach, it's great that we have found each other because, um, if you embrace cooperation and building together, then you're going to find people that there are other business coaches out there that only do boot camps. And I never do boot camps because that doesn't fit my personality type and it doesn't fit some of my philosophies about how I build businesses. But so it's not just about, again, like what you talked about. It's like not just the conversations you want to have, and it's not just but personality adds a positioning, both in how you structure the business, how you market the business, how you deliver the business, what kinds of conversations you want to be having in
Mm.
the business. And I think that's just really powerful to be like, okay, well, I can do similar things as somebody else from a wildly different point of view and a wildly different personality type and serve different clients with different needs and get, I mean, similar results, obviously, because we want to grow our businesses, but we're coming at it in a really different way. And I think that's an angle to really investigate as you build your authority. And as you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about like, well, as I'm going through my pivot, not just like, who do I want to be and what business do I want to build, but like, what does that mean for like how I show up and like, what do I talk about and how do I position myself in the market?
Yeah, asking that question at every single turn Like every single business decision should have that filter of like the me filter. Am I a good fit for this next step? Um, as we were sort of getting ready for this call, I found an old note that I'd written to myself, and I basically did like a SWOT analysis of myself. And in the threats section of my goals, I listed three threats that were like likely to happen based on my personality, and all of them came true. And I only found that threat document like 2 years later. So I was like, damn it, my weaknesses trap me. There were things like lack of focus on some goals and like too much big picture thinking. So yeah, we do know ourselves, and it's just like baking in. So probably a good place to wrap up. And how would you love for the Ask audience to connect with you going forward?
Yeah. We talked about consistency. If you want to hear more about building deeper foundations in your business, you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter that comes out at 10 a.m. Eastern every Sunday at jessicalackey.com/newsletter. And for my audience who's meeting Ellen for the first time and maybe they're in a pivot or they're looking for what's next in their business, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so if you're the type that isn't ready to settle, you want to make a big ask, the ask for your next phase of business, I'd love to have you on my email as well. I write on Wednesdays, and we'll link that in the notes. And yeah, check out the one-to-one coaching I do, kind of that deep 6 month program of like figuring out what that next big move is and making it happen. And that's called High Expectations. So yeah, hopefully we'll see more collaboration between our own communities after this as well.
I love it. Speaking of collaboration, someone you introduced me to, uh, we ended up having coffee while I was in Scotland.
Scotland. I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
It was glorious. And so, my ask of all of everyone here is this collaboration doesn't happen by accident. It happens very intentionally. Thank you for reaching out and like suggesting it. And, if you're looking to get your word out to more people, these collaborations are a great way to meet an amazing human being, but also expand your awareness and audience.
100%. And I found my copywriter through one of your deeper business dialogues in the Zoom chat. That's how we met. So yeah, it all works. So thanks, Jessica. Love chatting today.
Thank you.
Bye.